spite my ass.
I'm on my floor. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 65th year of the award at the 69th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1996. Today's guest is back for the third time. You last heard him discussing the box and the nominees of 1967. Please welcome back Fritz. Hello, Fritz.
Hey, thank you so much for having me and for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure.
And it's always an honor to have you. You're just a wonderful guest, and it's just so fun to just show people these random short films.
Yeah, and as I mentioned to you before, I always love it that when I get to be on your podcast, and this is a reason for me to watch them.
Yeah, it's like that. That's one of my favorite parts about this podcast. But just remind us, what is your general familiarity with the best animated short category?
So I think I confessed to this in the past already. It's not the biggest, I have to be honest. So this is probably one of the categories I know the least about. So that's why I'm so happy to actually watch them when I get to be on your podcast, or to learn more about them when I listen to it.
Exactly. It's the common case for most of my guests on this podcast, but that's the joy, especially having guests who come back again and again. It's just like giving you this overview of the category. You get to see just little cross sections of it, like year by year, and just get a better view of like what this category contains. And hopefully you might go out on your own and watch some of them too, but I won't force you.
Yeah, I mean, Christoph always has a lot of suggestions on what to watch there, and you have, so I'm trying my best. And yes, it is an up and down with the categories. So we had the joys of World War II, as we discussed the last time. 1967, I think you said, was not probably not the highlight year for this category. But I can say right away, so with this year, this was definitely an improvement.
Yeah, so let's just get into these shorts. This year has 4, making this the second to last year, as of this recording, to have less than 5 nominees. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Quest, directed by Tyrone Montgomery. This is the first and only nomination for Montgomery, as well as producer and co-writer Thomas Stelmach. As time goes on, we seem to be getting more and more nominees that come from people's thesis projects at film school. As such, Montgomery and Stelmach made this film at the art division of the University of Kassel in Germany. Beyond this film, however, Tyrone Montgomery would go on to find work in what I can only describe as media development. I have his LinkedIn page, and I'm finding job titles like innovation consultant and chief creative. It seems he's working with businesses to produce media or content. That's as much as I can really parse. Thomas Stelmach, however, stuck with animation. He had a company, Lichtoff, which made commercials, as well as often doing lectures and workshops on animation. I think as time goes on, we're going to get more and more stories of winners like this. They win an Oscar and then just retreat into standard business life as an animator or other areas of media production. It's becoming a lot rarer to have people with multiple nominations, because it's rare for people to have multiple major directorial works that get on the Academy's radar. But enough future talk. Let's go back to the short film at hand. Quest is about a man made of sand in search of water. He finds himself falling into a variety of different realms, from one made of paper, another filled with rocks, and another made of metal, and all the while following a distant sound of dripping water. Fritz, start us off. What did you think of Quest?
So I very much like the beginning, the first image, simply because it was this desert, and I think in the year of the English patient, this felt very in theme with the whole year at the Oscars. So this reminded me of the English Patient, and I love the English Patient, so I was immediately very positive. But in general, before we go into the details, I want to say this is for me what really a short movie is all about. It created a very specific setting and action and explained what it is about in just a few seconds, keeps you compelled for the runtime of the few minutes, which sounds very easy, but to be honest, with a lot of short movies, this actually is not very easy, and sometimes it is very easy to get bored in 2 minutes.
Yes.
But this one really keeps your attention from start to finish, and for me, it's really a great piece of work.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I I don't like the English Patient. I don't agree on that part, but it's like I do think
Very
this
few
is,
people do.
I do think this is a very well-made short film. It is gorgeous to look at. I love the different worlds we find ourselves in. And I do sort of agree that it can get a bit uh slow at times, especially since there isn't really a plot here to really attach yourself to. It literally is just this guy going on a quest. He is just walking around and he encounters things, but it's just like it's just him kind of like falling through each world. But I feel like we go to the different worlds often enough, and there's enough like interesting things that happen on screen for it to keep you engaged well enough, so it's like you're never too bored. It's never like a slog to sit through it. And it's like if this was like 20 minutes, it would have been a lot different, but this is a nice cool 10 minutes. It's just like it's just on the edge of like what is acceptable for a short film. But um but yeah, like I said, gorgeous. um the one thing is just like there's just not much to talk about here though. That's
Um,
part of the problem.
there is not a lot of there's not a lot of plot, but sorry if I didn't make myself clear earlier. So I really did not find this boring.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I found it. I just meant it is very easy to. For example, the last time I was on your part was 1967. There was a short movie. It's probably the box. I don't know. It was probably 5 minutes or something like this, and I was incredibly bored watching it. And this one, I totally wasn't. I there is a very what I loved so much about this is this very dark and tense atmosphere. There this very specific sound and also score of the short movie that it creates something very
Mhm.
haunting, and it really had me on the edge of my seat for a long time. And I have to say, the ending, it felt very. It's difficult to express, but when it ended, I really just sat there and looked at my screen for a minute to really process what I had just seen.
Mhm. Let's get into this ending because I think it's a very interesting part of it, and probably is what contains like if there is the deeper meaning of this, it probably is within that ending. So it's just like, so our main sand guy, he goes through the world of paper, world of rocks, and he finds himself in the world of metal, which has this all this machinery. And as he goes, digs down deep into it, he finds this little hole that leads him, and like as he's like falling through the world, it's like he finds the hole that leads him to like what he thinks is the world of water. And it's like he starts trying to push through the sheet metal, but then he ends up finds himself in like a trash compactor kind of thing. That's like the walls are closing in on him, and it's just like he's trying to make his way through, but it's just the metal isn't budging. And then it's like the last shot of the movie, we see the sand, like the individual grains of sand just fall through the hole that he's made, and then he ends up right back where he started in the world of sand. It's just like it was all just a mirage, or at least that's the way I interpreted it. As like that, it's such a darkly comic ending in a way. It's just like it makes the journey seem almost all for naught. But still, I do really like that ending.
And it's difficult to say. I enjoyed it very much, but I have to be honest, I still have no idea what exactly the movie wanted to say. I was absolutely engaged by it, but I have no idea what it really wants to say. I was hoping that you can maybe enlighten me, or that we can maybe come up with
Yeah,
with our series, what it is really about.
yeah, we could try to develop our own theories. It's like it's like part when I was watching it, I did start thinking about how like it could be partially about like technological advancement, and because like I was thinking of the Stone Age and like the Metal Age, but it's like paper doesn't really fit into that well. Or maybe that could be representative of like wood or whatever, or but at the same, and it's just like, but then again, I don't think that really fits with the ending unless it's saying like man will be killed by his own machine or whatever, which I think might be a bit of a stretch for this specific short film because since the plot of it doesn't really fit into that theming. But I don't know, maybe it's just about the futility of human endeavor or something like that.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I mean, if you take it very literal, then of course you simply have this, as stupid as it sounds, of course, the searching for water theme, which is obviously very important. But also with these different words, I was also thinking about what they could mean. I mean, you can say that you start with sand, which is very, so it's just these very small parts, and you have paper, which is already, there's already more to it, but it's still very soft. And you have the rocks, and then you have the metal, but I'm not sure if metal is really harder than rocks. I have no idea. And then, of course, in the metal world, you also have these machines. So there's obviously, I don't know if there's some form of life in this world, or it's really, it's very tricky. And it seems like the water is hidden in the metal world,
Hmm.
or that, or I'm not sure if, I'm not
Yeah,
sure if if water is the next world that would come after the metal world, but you just cannot get to it. So
like
it,
I was really like considering like we see the sand fall through the metal world and then he it just ends up back at the sand world. I'm thinking like there really was no quote unquote water world or water realm. Oh, it's just like it was just an illusion. It's just like I could so it like as he falls back and reforms back in the sand world, I'm just thinking it's like this is just a loop. It's just like he is doomed to forever search for water. It's like he ended up right back where he started, and he's probably going to go on the exact same journey over and over again.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's
like
also the question, why is it a Sandman?
I mean, he's must be very sleepy, I guess.
Yes.
But they're off topic just a little bit, but there's this other short film earlier this decade called The Sandman, and it's just like about a monster that takes children's eyes if they spot him when they're supposed to be sleeping, and it's just like just it's just a funny image to get while on this short film, just the juxtaposition between the two. But anyway,
Okay, you
uh
you have to let me know which one this is. This sounds interesting.
oh yeah, I'll send it to you. It's a very good short film.
Yeah.
I think Christoph really likes it too. But yeah, after the podcast, I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult to fully grasp this, but as I said, there is something so haunting about the images and the story, and combined with the sound and the score, that this is, yeah, I thought this was pretty much fantastic, even if I have no idea what it's about.
Yeah, it's like that's the thing with a lot of these more these European. It tends to be often with more Eastern European films. I guess no, wait, no, Berlin Wall has fallen by this time, but like uh I guess German might come into that, but it's just like there was a big movement how with Eastern European animation how they were specifically trying to get away from like the Disney style of storytelling where it's like it's very clear cut, it's very uh it's very moralizing where it just tells you straight up like what you should be thinking. And instead they tend to like they tend to be a lot more symbolic and a lot less like upfront with the meanings of them. And so you have to actually, think about the story or whatever. But it's then again, it's like times like these where it's just like, what is the meaning here? And I don't want to say that just because this was made as a student film that there's no meaning to it or that the meaning is less important. but at the same time, this is technically a student film, so maybe that should be factored into consideration. But then
Yeah,
again,
but
like,
yeah, I know it's difficult. I mean, you probably wouldn't come up with a story like this if you didn't have some kind of intentions behind it.
exactly. Like, maybe we'll get in contact with Tyrone Montgomery or Thomas Stelmach, or they'll listen to this episode on the off chance, and they'll like come into my DMs and be like, "Hey, you completely misunderstood my short film. Here is exactly what it meant.
Yeah,
Stupid."
I would love to hear that what it meant.
I would love to be yelled at them. Uh, but
Every Oscar winner is allowed to yell at me.
yes, especially the best actress winners.
Yeah, they of course they can do anything they want. Cher can slap me anytime.
Yeah. Yeah, but with that, I think that's a good place to move on to our second nominee, which is Canhead, directed by Timothy Hiddle. This is the first and only nomination for Hiddle, as well as Chris Peterson, who seems to just be the director of photography, but still earned the nomination anyway. Canhead is the second entry in what is known as the J. Clay trilogy, with every entry starring J. Clay and his dog Blue. This film was preceded by The Potato Hunter in 1991 and succeeded by The Quiet Life in 2010. All three films were directed by Hiddle as side projects while he pursued an animating career. He got his start working on Gumby and Pee-wee's Playhouse, but his first big career step was working with Henry Selick. He was first hired as an animator on The Nightmare Before Christmas, and it seems he stuck with Selick. Whether friends or mere professional partnership, Hiddle would work on James and the Giant Peach and Monkey Bone, Selick's next two films, and in turn thank Selick in the credits of Canhead. Outside of that, Hiddle was also a computer animator too, doing a lot of work with Pixar animating on films like A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2 and 3, The Incredibles, Monsters University, and the short film Partly Cloudy. That was the extent of what I could really find about Hiddle at first, but a little bit of digging got me a German Wikipedia page that listed his alma mater, Vincennes University. I also found that he worked on The Aquatic Life of Steve Zissou with Henry Selick as well, and I also found not only his current home address, but his two previous addresses. I didn't mean to, they just showed up in the search, and I think now that was a good place to stop with the research because I might find things I really shouldn't. There was a moment I thought I found files from a divorce case of his too, but that was actually for a different person named Timothy Hiddle. Anyway, Canhead. The film is about Jay Clay and Blue on a hike. They stop to rest, and it turns out Jay doesn't have any food. Blue then wanders off, ending up on the other side of a gorge. Jay Clay is distraught, and things couldn't possibly get any worse. That is, until night falls and a dormant Canhead comes to life and chases Jay, trying to kill him. A regular Javid and Kenliath story, I should say. Uh, I I thought so. First, I want to preface this by saying, uh, I I ended up watching all three Jay Clay films and just in preparation for this, just because I thought there's only three, might as well just educate myself on this trilogy and just see where Canhead fits into it. And I want to say these are just three really good short films. It's a very solid trilogy. I love Jay Clay and Blue as characters. It's animated so well. The music is astounding. It's one of my favorite parts of these. It's like the way it interacts with the films as a whole. Uh, but for Canhead specifically, I think this is actually the weakest of the three Jay Clay short films. Uh, it's not bad by any means. I did really enjoy it, but it's just like I would have preferred the Potato Hunter to get a nomination. But anyway, Canhead. Uh, I really liked it. It's a very typical kind of short film in terms of like it's something you could see at least in terms of the plot. It's something you could see way back in like 1940s or whatever, or when they were making these very typical like you got the main character who you have in the different shorts, and then you got the villain, and it's just like they have a fight scene, and it's like it's a very standard, very slapsticky kind of short, and it works. It's a very tried and true formula, but that's also kind of maybe the problem that I have with it too. It's just like it's a very standard short film that I don't think tries to do anything new outside of the animation medium. That it I think it does do interesting things with the stop motion, but at the core of it, it's just a very standard short film that it's just like if it weren't for this incredibly smooth and gorgeous animation as well as the music, it's just like I would probably forget this immediately. But anyway, Fritz, how about you?
So I didn't know that it was part of a trilogy. I think Canhead was the only one of the nominees that didn't have its own Wikipedia page, and to be honest, I didn't make much more research on the movie, so I wasn't aware of this. Um, so this is for me the example of a short movie that isn't too long, but that, to be honest, bored me in some parts. Um, I also like the animation very much. I have to be honest, at the beginning, it was the one I watched right after Quest, and at the beginning, I felt that it looked a little bit alike at the beginning, the two characters, so it was kind of funny. Um, yeah, it was for me, it was a bit difficult to really get into the story, and I feel that there was so much going on while not really having any plot. So I understand it. I mean, it's not like in Quest. As we just said, there are not a lot of explanations of what is going on. But I felt this whole Canhead that suddenly appeared. Then he was suddenly in this underground world where he's stepped on this dark matter and for a short moment turned into a monster, and then he got back to normal. Then there was this candle, then everything exploded, then he suddenly had a weapon, then he began to fight. I don't know, it was I had no idea where this was going, why anything was happening. It was nicely done and it kept me engaged in some parts when I wasn't bored. I liked at the ending that he was reunited with the dog, but I don't know, I don't know what, I didn't really get too much out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's just a very haphazard kind of thing. It's just like, and like to compare it to Quest, it's just like that one has a, while it has like less happening, it does have a very clear through line. Like it's a very straightforward kind of thing we're watching here. Here, but for Canhead, it's just like you're just kind of muddled in this little middle area that just like where things are just happening and you're not sure if anything is actually building to anything. It's just like, oh, we're fighting the cat head. He's running away. It's just like, oh, he tries to hide, things happen. It's just like, okay, but how is this building to him eventually defeating the canhead? And it's just like, and I do like how he eventually defeats the canhead, where it's like he gets on his back and drums on his head. It's like it becomes a Ratatouille kind of thing where he's like controlling it. And then it's just like that's how he also gets over the gorge to get back to the dog. And it's just like it's a nice conclusion to the short, but at the same time, there's just a long stretch in there. It just feels a little slow. But again, I still liked it. I still had fun with it. But it's also just it's not the best it could have been. I don't think. Like I feel like there could have been more development in terms of like what actually happens with it. And also, this is a weird complaint, but at times the animation feels a bit like too smooth, a bit too like perfected. It's a bit. He also moves a bit slowly, where it's just like when something happens, he has this like elongated reaction to it before actually doing anything, and it's just like it's not like in a more intense reaction or anything. It's just like he just reacts in that sort of deliberate, slow-ish way. As just like it, I feel like I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure why it kind of bugs me a little bit, but it's just like it just feels like things should be moving a bit quicker. It should be, and like I guess I'm just used to stop motion being a little bit jittery. So when it is so smooth like this, it feels a little off. I don't know. I don't think that's it. Yeah, but there's there's just something weird about the animation to me. And I think it's something that also that I hear about like so I know that Timothy Hiddle, he wasn't like a film student at this point. He was a professional animator who was working on these big feature films. But I remember hearing about like how in film school, like a lot of animators have a problem of like over animating. thing where it's just like they will develop, like they would put so many frames into a very simple shot. It's just like, oh, it's just a reaction shot or something like that. It's like it just draws too much attention to itself to the point where it's like it distracts from the rest of it, the actual story or whatever of the short film. And so it's like I feel like that is a bit of a problem here, where it's like over animated, but I still liked it. I do want to keep preferencing this. I do like this short film. It's just I'm finding things that there are to criticize with it, even though I probably shouldn't be criticizing it as much as I am doing.
Yeah, I might also criticize it more than necessary. I just I don't know. It's nicely done. So some parts were just a bit perplexing. I mean, how did this dog get on the other side of this canyon or whatever it was?
It jumped.
Um, yeah,
And
did he?
actually, that's what I was thinking, that like the gorge is small enough where it's like if you go at the right angle, he could have easily just jumped across it
Okay,
without bothering the
okay,
cannon.
okay. I accept it.
It's just
I mean,
like if the dog could get over there, Jay Clay could easily do it too.
I mean, I've found a funny part when at the beginning when he is kind of rubbing his foot and he presses it so much the toes come out because he didn't have toes, but then he suddenly has them for a short moment. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, where he's like massaging his foot. It's like that.
Yes.
That was a cool moment. I did really like that.
And yeah, I thought the dog was nicely. You felt what it was about. You felt why he wanted to get over there. I have no idea what the Canheads. Again, like with Quest, I have no idea what the Canheads are supposed to mean, why they are there, how this all worked. But yeah, I agree with you that the ending, how he won the fight, so getting on the back of him and drumming on his head, that was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm. But with this one, I feel less certain that there is an actual meaning here. I think it is meant to just be kind of like a fun, silly movie. And like, sure, it's just like there probably is like some logic to the world. I feel like Timothy it'll probably has thought out like the internal workings of like how all this happens or things like that. But I wouldn't essentially like jump to the idea that there is like, oh, this is actually speaking to greater themes about like gentrification or something like that. And or it's like the white man stepping on tribal land or whatever. Or it's just like it. I don't think that there was a deeper meaning by Tip Hiddle on that front, but I think he's definitely put a lot of thought into these characters and in this world about like, yes, this is how Jay Clay would react to these things. And it's like I do really like Jay Clay as a character. I do like his dog Blue. It's like that's why I went and watched the other ones, because it's like I just felt like this this is an intriguing character. It's like I would like to see more short films starring Jay Clay and Blue. It's just like, hey, and if I may, I do want to talk briefly about the other two short films, especially the Potato Hunter, because in that one, it's just like Jay Clay and Blue are hungry and they go to hunt potatoes. They don't grow them. The potatoes are alive. And it's just like they hunt them like cattle. Well, it's just like because he gets like a lasso and like gets one and he's like stabbing it, and it's like the potato is clearly in pain, and I felt so bad for this potato. And it's just like Jesus Christ. And it's brutal, but it's also like it's just a potato, and he's just like getting a potato to eat for him and his dog. And it's just like I loved it, but it's also like almost traumatic just to watch it. But yeah, it's still great. Um, but yeah, uh Canhead, not very deep, but also I appreciate the effort that went into making this.
Definitely. No, I also don't think that it's deep. I also didn't think that there was really more meaning to it than just the story that he had this lost his dog and then fight this Canhead. Again, I just was just wondering, why is it a Canhead? Why was it the strange candle in this underground cave that he found? But yeah, it's probably just the story and the world that was created here. So there was a lot of imagination, definitely.
Hmm. Yeah, you can't fault this film for being too imaginative. It's just it. I do really enjoy the world we find ourselves in. It's just the specific plot elements. But unless you have something else you'd like to say about this, so I think this is a good place to move on.
Yeah, fine for me.
All right. So we'll move on to our third nominee, which is La Sala, directed by Richard Condi. This is the second and final nomination for Condi after previously nominated for The Big Snit. This is also the 25th nomination for the National Film Board of Canada. Condi and the others at the Winnipeg branch of the NFB were known for pushing the boundaries of animation, as well as blurring the lines between comedy and irritation. Once again, Condi finds himself pushing the medium, this time by entering the world of 3D computer graphics. While computer animation isn't anything new for the NFB, as they were actually responsible for the first nominee in this category to use computer animation with Hunger, this is one of their earliest forays into the 3D variety. However, this seems to be the last major work from Condi. The only major work after this is a partially lost TV pilot called The Ark, and since then, Condi seems to only come back to show business when his friend Cordell Barker wants him to do some voice work. Otherwise, he steps back from the limelight. So, what does Richard Condi give us for his swan song? La Sala is a short operatic aria with a libretto by Condi and translated to Italian and sung by Jay Brazu. The short starts with our main character shooting small cows out of a cannon at a painting of a field. There is a devil on his wall that keeps offering him tomatoes, but the main character keeps refusing him. But what might happen if he accepts the temptation? Will anything in the short make sense? Fritz, what did you think of La Sala?
Well, to every listener who hasn't seen it yet, yes, this is exactly as crazy as you just described. Yes, there are cows being shot at walls. Yes, there is some kind of devil. This is, I have no idea what this is. It is absolutely crazy. It is absolutely what the fuck is going on. It looks like one of those early Nintendo computer games in some parts, but I absolutely loved it again. I really I like this opera part where he suddenly just starts to sing opera and you have the subtitles and he sings everything was going well and now I have a cow in my nose and
Yes. That's the best part of it.
yeah, and I've zero idea what's going on there. This plane that is flying around and constantly screaming, and I don't know, there's so much craziness happening. But yeah, it's it's hard to explain. Also, the whole animation style. But yeah, totally crazy, but worth it.
Yeah, I do not know if I like this or not because it's just like on the one hand, it is so deeply intentionally annoying in every aspect. The main
Yeah,
character is annoying. Ev- Everything is making noise and screaming, and it and it's just like it deliberately just has no sense to it. It's just a whole lot of whatever happening thing, and it's just like you there is very little to really grab onto. But at the same time, it is just so overwhelming in what it is very clearly designed to do that you almost can't help but just laugh along and just completely submit yourself to the world it presents to you. It's just like it, honestly, I think if this thing were longer, I would have a better time with it because it would just put me on the brink of insanity or closer to it, where it's just like I would more fully give myself to the world. But it's over so quickly that it's just like I'm able to like break free from its grasp. And it's just like, but yeah, there's just one thing I will say, like, it's like, first of all, the CG animation, though incredibly ugly, incredibly crude, I do enjoy seeing like the Richard Condi style in this format. I think the different objects in this room are so delightfully designed. It's just like it's so bewildering to see this small room that we find ourselves in. It's just like there's a bus stop right outside the window. There's of course the devil on the wall. There's all these different random things just around the room, and it's just like it's it's almost suffocating, just like how small it is and where we find ourselves. But I do like the design of it, and it's just like it's just as I was saying. It's just like it's so crazy and so irritating and so absurd that a part of me just wants to hate it and just never uh force myself to watch this ever again. But part of me wants to watch this over and over again and just really submit myself to this world. And it's like I don't know which one I want to be, but I can understand why some people would immensely love this, and I can understand why people would hate it because I'm not sure which side I fall on.
I wouldn't say I immensely love it, but I respect it a lot for being so focused and so 100% what it wants to be. So as you said, it's constantly on, it's constantly going like 100 miles per minute. There's always noise there. The animation, yeah, it looks, yeah, it looks weird, but it follows through. It never gives in. It really says, okay, I want to do this. I want to make this movie as annoying as possible. I want to create this very weird world where this, I don't know, kind of reminded me of maybe of this evil kid from Toy Story that tortures his toys. I have no idea if he has the same goal. And then we have him sing opera in the middle of it, and we are really dedicated to this approach, and we follow through with it all the way till the end. And I respect that.
Mhm. And if as we've been doing with the other two, I want to try and analyze this film because I think there is what I keep reading about it is that it's a film about temptation. It's just like that. Even on the NFB upload, I actually want to go and find it because I remember the description. The description on YouTube had a really funny uh wait, yeah, the description starts with wowza. It's just like wowza, this wacky Oscar nominated animated short film reveals the classic tale of temptation in a wonderfully weird way. And it's just like I know that's what it says, but I think this is more about procrastination. And it's just like I see like the opening of it as like I see it as like almost autobiographical, like Richard Condi making this film. He's him shooting the cows out of the cannon is him aiding animating, and then the devil on the wall, the tomato is just like it could be anything, just something that gets him away from his work. And the one time like when he does go over to the door and when he like opens it up or whatever and sees the tomato or whatever, and it's just like that's when his head falls off and he just can't get back to his work after that. It's just a snowballing in terms of like how he just can't. He just constantly just distracted and just can't find a way to get himself back to work. Or it's just like I think that's what it's about. And it's ironically, the most obtuse short film is the one that I find has the clearest meaning in it.
Yeah, it's probably a short movie that has a deeper meaning because it's such just so crazy that you feel there has to be something behind it. And I totally accept your interpretation because again, it's like a little bit like with Quest. My mind is blank on what it wants to say. But of course, both movies couldn't be any more different. I mean, you have Quest, which is so quiet, so more like haunting, this very dark and disturbing atmosphere, and La Salle is more like, okay, we're throwing everything at the wall that we have with 100 miles per hour and just see what happens.
Yeah. Um and so I know you probably haven't seen this film, but I mentioned earlier Richard Condi's other film, The Big Snit, and I think it's interesting to compare the two because I think that one I ended up enjoying more, even though it took a couple rewatches for me to actually admit that. Um, but I think I respected this one more because, like, while Well, the big snit. So that one is about this married couple who are playing Scrabble together and just have these like really petty arguments or whatever. Or as just like that one, I just find like it. These films both try to be kind of off-putting and annoying, but I think the big snit, what it does is that it just uses being annoying as a form of humor, or as just like I just think it isn't funny as that form of humor. Meanwhile, this one, being annoying is its whole thing. It is every aspect of this film. It goes so hard into being annoying. It's just like, and while I think that ends up for me enjoying the film less, I find I respect it more. It's like, okay, this is what you want to do. By God, you do it. God bless you, Richard Condy. You are a real Canadian treasure. Uh, it may not be for me, but I'm glad you found people who enjoy your work, just in
It's like,
all its flaws.
I mean, if you want to have a maybe more well-known comparison, you can say it's the short movie version of Estelle Parsons in Bonnie and Clyde. It it really said, okay, I'm gonna annoy everyone as much as I can, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it right till the end, and nobody will stop me.
I mean, sure. I don't think anybody expected to compare La Sala to Estelle Parsons and Bonnie and Clyde, but I that is why I bring you here. I think only you could make that kind of comparison.
And I
But
say this as someone who loves Estelle Parsons and Bonnie and
yeah, so
Clyde,
do I.
but I know so many people who absolutely hate her.
Yeah, the comparison works.
Sometimes you just want to be annoying,
Mhm.
and
Perhaps
yeah.
I I think perhaps like a closer comparison might also be something like if you know the film Freddy Got Fingered, where it's just like by
Oh god.
Tom Green, and it's just like it's just a film that is so terribly just tried to be like this film. It's just so terribly trying to be annoying in every single aspect. It's trying to gross you out. It just tries all these random non sequiturs, and it's just so intense. But I find myself just I'm unable to stop thinking about it. It is just so amazing in its terribleness as just it it's almost the perfect film, I would say, but also it's might be one of the worst films ever made.
Yeah, I have to say it's been ages since I saw it, but I mean, again, I can respect that they simply said, "Fuck it, we're doing this." But I absolutely hated this with passion when I saw it. So I it was I think I saw this the last time at a New Year's Eve party with a couple of friends. So this was, I think, was the first movie we saw in the new year because it came like in the middle of the night on TV, and we decided to watch it, and I absolutely hated it.
And that's a perfectly valid reaction to it. In fact, it's probably the most expected reaction. It's what
Yeah, it
most
is, and I
people
mean,
react with.
and I knew how bad its reputation was, and I'm always like, okay, it can't be that bad. No, okay,
But yeah,
yeah,
so
it
I
is.
guess we have the two spectrums of La Sala. We have Estelle Parsons and Bonnie and Clyde, and we have Freddy
Yeah,
Got Fingered, and somewhere in between, you'll find La Sala.
it is a very interesting artistic line.
Mhm. Yeah, but yeah,
So,
it's like on
so
all fronts.
yeah,
I feel like
Estelle Parsons screamed, so Freddy could get fingered.
exactly.
All made perfect sense.
La Sala, would you like some sausage? But yes, it's this is a nominee I won't be forgetting anytime soon. This is like even if it's not one of my favorite nominees ever, or even it's not even going to be one of my favorite nominees of this lineup. It's still just a film that exists and I will respect it and I will probably talk about it a lot more than I'll talk about probably any of these other nominees. But that's where I'm off. Any final thoughts, Fritz?
I love you, Estelle.
I love you still too. You are a very deserving supporting actress winner.
You are.
But we'll move on to our fourth and final nominee, which is Watts Pig, directed by Peter Lord. This is Lord's second and final nomination after 1992's Adam, but the sixth nomination for Aardman Animation, previously nominated and winning last year for Wallace and Gromit in A Close Shave. Again, I want to point out how Peter Lord co-founded Aardman way back in the 70s, yet he can only manage 2 nominations, while someone who was working under him, Nick Park, gets 3 wins off of 4 nominations. I find quotes from him about like how the success of Wallace and Gromit is a success for all of us, but I feel like there has to be a part of him that is a little jealous. In any case, Lord and Park after this would direct Aardman's first feature film, Chicken Run, and after this point, Lord would step back into a producer position, and to this day, with an exception for the film Pirates Band of Misfits, which he solely directed. On Watts Pig, there's this quote from Peter Lord about how he didn't expect the film to make any money, but the film didn't need to make any money either. They had plenty of money from vast commercialization of Creature Comforts and Wallace and Gromit, that they had the freedom to make films like Watts Pig, pure creative expression, which is the dream of any filmmaker or production company. It actually reminds me a bit of the peak era of UPA in the 1950s. The company had found a perfect balance of commerce and artistic vision, with our Mr. Magoo character raking in the cash, and they had other shorts that were actually good. Only this time, Nick Park doesn't get blacklisted due to communist values. But I digress. Watts Pig is set in medieval times and begins with a man stealing one of twin babies from a castle. The thief, however, drops the baby and it is found by a pig. Years later, we see the twins' lives side by side. One is a king, the other is a humble farmer. The king has war declared against him, the farmer is drafted. After the war is lost, with enemy forces encroaching on the land, the farmer sneaks into the castle to try and rescue his pig. But when he's discovered, the king suggests they trade places. Will the farmer save the kingdom? Will the king be able to survive as a peasant? Is the pig okay? I thought this is a very fine short film. Fine as in mediocre. It is it's just a very simple kind of it's the Prince and the Pauper story, where you have these two twins, or at least two people who look exactly alike, like who are raised apart, but then it's like they counter each other and decide to swap places. But it does have its own little twists on it, how like the king is very greedy, very corrupt, and it's just like he's he's very much depicted as a bad king. Or I guess maybe he's a prince. It's not explicitly stated either way. I just assumed he was a king because he's the one who's like has the war declared against him and stuff. He seems to be the leader of those affairs. But yeah, you have a king who's a piece of shit. You have a farmer who seems like a nice guy who has this cute little pig who both raised him and is also his pet. It's a weird relationship they have. But and then it's just like I don't know. It's hard to just like summarize this whole film because a lot happens in it, and it's just like I ended up not really caring. It's just like things kept happening, and it's like okay, and then the ending happens, and it's like okay, that's kind of funny, and it's just like that's all there is. It's just a very standard short film. However, it's not as fun as Canhead was either. What do you think?
I think you summarized it pretty well. It is the most conventional of the three, so it has a very clear story. There's no need to try to find a deeper meaning. It is as you said, a very classic. It is these there, there is this very famous version of the story, countless times been told. I mean, I think even Leonardo DiCaprio made some kind of movie at one point where he played the King of France and his twin brother, and I think this is based on a very old story about a prince and a brother, and were separated. And yeah, there is nothing really surprising happening. I felt there was a little bit of there were some humorous moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, yeah, it's kind of difficult to really say. I thought the split screen at the beginning was kind of funny when you see him getting up and working, and the other one is sleeping all day. And I don't really know why the pig had to be locked up at some point. It just felt a little bit weird. The whole beginning that the thief comes into the castle and tries to steal a baby. Is it the funny? It's weird to say this about about a short movie, but this could have been shorter.
Honestly, if it's shorter, it's just like you don't have any, like you're just losing plot points because it's a very dense film. It's like there's always plot happening, and it's just like I don't think you could make it shorter, but also it's like it does need to be shorter. But it's also just like they made it as short as they can. It's just like at this point, it's just a bad short film. Well, not bad, just mediocre. And it's
It's
just
not
like,
bad. It's just very. It's like when we had our World War II discussion. We always get back to this. Um, there were two nominees telling the story of the three little pigs, and one of them was rather creative. And I think the wolf was supposed to be Hitler, and the pigs were. I don't remember specifically, but it was very creative. And the other one was simply retelling the story of the three little pigs without any. It was just the story, and this is essentially that. It is just the story of these two guys who were separated. One is king, one is the farmer, and then this war happens. And I don't know. There's nothing really to it.
mhm. Yeah, and you had mentioned the split screen effect, and I think that is one of the better parts of the film. I think it is an interesting filmmaking device. It does keep me interested when it's being used, but it's just not enough to really save the film. And I also do like the ending, how it's like, I, how so the ending of the film, we have the enemy forces encroaching in, and it's like the king and the farmer swap places, and the king taking the farmer's clothes goes back to the farm and hides out, whereas the farmer, as the king, he makes it seem like he's going to fight back, and then from the farm from the perspective of the farm as he's hiding out in there, as the king is hiding out in there, it's like we hear like battle noises, explosions, and things like that. And when he wakes up after this night's rest or whatever, he finds the pig, his mom, which was still alive. I barely mentioned her because she's not really relevant, and the king are all hiding out in the farm. And it's like when he goes out, he finds that the kingdom is completely destroyed, and the farmer guy just left and saved his mom and his pig. It's just like it's a very funny conclusion, especially since I kind of read it as like almost a retribution, or it's like a comeuppance for the king, where it's just like the farmer was like really upset. We see him pay taxes earlier. It's like the guy takes all his money or whatever, or and it's like so I read it as like a retribution, or it's like I oh fuck this kingdom, it hasn't done anything for me in my life. I so it's just like he lets it get destroyed, and he just goes back to his humble life living on a farm. And I think that's a very good ending, but at the same time it's just like the stuff leading up to it isn't that good either.
Uh, I also like the ending. I also like the part you mentioned when he has to pay the taxes. I liked it when he and the pig are sitting on the side of the road, and then the king comes by, and they quickly put on like merchant like fan wear, and then have little flags and make yay.
Yay! Yeah, it's like
That was pretty
pretending they're
funny.
patriotic.
Yes. And I mean, I find it funny when you mention when the king is hiding in the farmhouse and there's fighting outside. I mean, this I think this is supposed to be some kind of happening in the Middle Ages or someplace. And when he is in the farmhouse, it's like there's a Star Wars outside happening with all the lights and stuff going on.
Mhm. It's like I almost expected it to like I expected the ending to be like it wasn't actually explosions, it was like fireworks where like the two nations reconciled, or something like that. But no, it is just explosions. Everything got destroyed.
I mean, it is kind of a strange ending. It was like, I mean, I would like to know what now happens. I mean, if the enemy conquered the kingdom, what will happen? Can they just be normal farmers now, or
Mhm.
will there be some kind of terror regime?
Yeah, I'm actually curious about that too, because it's like it seemed like very thoroughly destroyed, but also the enemy guy seemed like he wanted the land. So it's just like, what's gonna happen? I I imagine it'll just kind of be we'll just end up back in the same situation where it's just like the evil dictator guy wants taxes, takes all taxes. It's just like it's that classic story of like history. It's just like if you depose a dictator, you often end up with just a worse dictator in that spot.
Yeah. And I mean, can we also settle the question: was he raised by the pig?
Yes, he was. I think that's very clearly said.
Okay. Okay,
He,
it's just, yeah, okay. I mean, I also thought it was, but it just seems a little bit weird. But okay.
it is very weird, especially since it's like once we've seen him growing up, it's like he treats the pig as like a pet, even
Yeah, he
though
treats him like a dog, and I was wondering why is it not a dog?
yeah, it'd be very funny actually if he ended up like raised by wolves or something. It's just like he's living out of a cave.
So did the pig have the farm already, or did he then get the? There's so many to settle here, so many questions here.
That's actually a good
Was the
question.
pig running the farm by itself?
May there could have been like the pig actually could have been owned by like a previous farmer, or and he was raised and the guy was raised by that farmer, but then that farmer died in the interim, and uh, our our farmer here took over, and so it's like and it's just like
We need
that's probably the
an
more
yeah.
logical solution.
We
But
need
I
an
do,
origin story and a sequel.
yeah, I also just prefer the idea that the pig raised him. It's like that's why he doesn't really talk much. But yeah, it's just Watt's pig. Uh,
What's pig? Yeah.
and
What's
also,
up, pig?
what's a pig?
Yeah.
Uh, also, it's just like why? It's like I imagine it's just like behind the scenes. He must have been called Watt because it since the title is Watt's pig. But it's like we don't ever hear their names in the short film. They're not in the credits or anything. It's just like so. It's really we're just like who's Watt? It's just like I don't know who
Mm,
Watt is.
I don't know. Whose pig is it anyway?
It's, that's my favorite improv show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, but for all we know, it's like the king could be why. It could be secretly his pig because he rules the kingdom and all that.
Yeah,
As
everything
like,
is his.
and it's like that's why the pig ended up in the jail because it's like he was reclaiming what was his.
Yeah.
It's like he didn't pay enough taxes, so his pig got repossessed. Uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I assumed they probably had the pig because they wanted to use it as food for the soldiers, but it's kind of weird to give a set to put a pig in prison.
yeah, it's just like it. It's not really explained like how or why the pig ends up in jail. And it's
Yeah.
just like it's just something that had to
That's
happen in order
that's
for
where I
the
felt it. That's where I felt it could be shorter. So they could probably have come up with another reason why they meet, why the brother and why the two brothers meet.
Mhm. It's like I feel like they should have just gone with like he was going to the castle to like to like say like oh we lost the battle, everybody's dead except for me. He has just like but they're like no, I'm going to take the banner instead and you go back to your farm, and then it's just like oh but I need to go in because the pig. And just like I guess there could be the idea that it'd be funnier for him to go for a pig that's in jail, but at the
Mm.
same time it's just like nothing in the short is really funny, so who cares. I'm
Yeah, but
sorry, Peter
they
Lord.
tried.
they they tried too much. It's just it just
I mean,
didn't work.
yeah. I mean, it's. I don't want to hold this too much against them. I mean, you can also make a short movie that's just a story without anything else. But it just feels that in this lineup with these three other that felt more daring and more creative, it just sticks out as a bit. beige.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really what it is. It's the beige film. It's the even though I think Canhead technically is more beige, is just like this is the one that I would define as beige. Uh, but yeah, I think we have talked plenty about this film, and that brings us to towards the end of our podcast. We've gone through and talked about the four nominees, and we're now going to rank them all. Fritz, start us off with your number four.
My number four, surprisingly, is What's Pig.
Yeah, there's no surprise there. It's the beige one. Um, and I actually switched up my ranking while we were discussing here. It's like I thought I had a good ranking, but after talking about these films, it's just like I realized I had to switch things around a bit. So my number four is Watts Pig, which was originally my number three. And it's just like I just realized that there just wasn't much here that I really enjoyed, that I really thought that was funny. And it's like there is enough good in here where it's not a bad film, but at the same time, there's just not anything here that's ever going to bring me back. It's nothing that's going to make me think about this ever again. It's just a mediocre Aardman short, and that's all there is to it. Number three.
My number three is Canhead.
Oh. My number three is La Sala, and it's just like this would this and Watts Pig was the two that I ended up switching because it's like, well, I might be more repulsed by the short film just on theory or whatever. It's just I just discovering my respect for it, discovering that there is a lot that I really do enjoy about this short film. It's like despite its irritation, it's just like yeah, I can't call this a bad film considering how much I enjoy talking about it. How much I do enjoy just thinking back to all of the random shit that happens in this film. It is it is so unflinchingly itself, and it's just like I have to respect it, but I can't for the life of me place it any higher than three. Number
I
two.
I at first assumed that after watching Canhead, I assumed that this would probably be my number four because, as I said, it felt quite boring to me at some parts. But then, of course, What's Pig came along, so this saved Canhead.
What's
So my number two is just want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. It's La Sala. Yeah, I want to say La Sala, La Sala because yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely there's no words to describe it, and I respect that a lot. And it's so weird that at some point it's so strange that it becomes good at some point.
Mhm. My number two is Canhead. It's like it's a very standard short film, and it's just like it. It's hard to go wrong with such a standard idea of a short film. It's just like it's very slapstick heavy, and there's some funny moments. It's got some really good animation. I love the characters, but what holds it back, like I said back then, it was just there's just no real through line. It just feels like it's just muddling around during the slapstick sections. It's like nothing is happening. It's just running around and whatever. And it's just that's fine, but it's not going to give it the number one spot. And your number one, Fritz, which appears to be both of our number ones.
Yeah, it's surprisingly my number one is Quest, which I really enjoyed, and I would say of all the short movies that we have discussed so far together, this would probably be my favorite.
That honestly feels kind of bad. It's just like I feel like I should put you on better episodes if Quest is the best one we've had.
Oh, but I
But
really liked it.
but but yeah, it's like Quest is also my number one, and it's just like it's not one of my favorite winners, but the Academy did get it right with this lineup, or in this lineup, giving Quest the win because it is a very gorgeous film. It's a honestly, yeah, it's just gorgeous. It's a very just I don't have words to describe it. It's just a very good film that I enjoyed watching, and it's very well made and great, good film. I enjoy movies. That's it.
We enjoy movies.
That should be we should I should retell the podcast to just be we enjoy movies. Just make it more generic. Uh, but before we end our show, Christoph, are there any, or sorry, not Christoph,
Oh,
Fritz.
I take it as an honor.
Before we end our show, Fritz, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share or anything you'd like to promote?
I mean, I can, of course, I can always promote myself. So if you want, you can find me on Twitter. And yes, I still name it Twitter.
It's
I
Twitter.
don't,
It's just like I'm
yeah,
not going to call it the new name.
no, and I don't want to give this evil guy dissatisfaction, so I call it Twitter. You can find me at Fritz and Jaskes, and you can also find me under Fritz and Jaskes on my YouTube channel, where if you like short movies, then you probably don't like my videos. They are definitely no short movies, but maybe you want to check them out.
If they get this far in the podcast, they certainly can tolerate longer episodes. I I I'm very much looking forward to the 2000s because it's going to be, I think those episodes are going to be shorter because those short films are worse and therefore we're going to want to talk about them less. But I just know
Sometimes if it's really bad, then you really have a lot to say about it.
true. Like, oh God, 2009 is my least favorite lineup. It's just like that's going to be a lot of me ranting about how bad those films are. But then it's like once we get into the 2010s, it's like everything is really good and everything has like a lot to say about it. And it's like I'm probably going to end up with a 3-hour episode at one point, which is one of the things I desperately wanted to avoid with this podcast. And it's just like, God, I'm becoming what I hate.
I mean, it's always, you never know what you can talk about. I probably could talk more about, for example, Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody than Marlon Brando, for example. I mean, sometimes if you hate it, you can talk about it a lot.
True. It's like when I get to the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse episode, no one will be able to shut me up for that one. Oh God. But thank you, Fritz, once again for coming on the show. And thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.